and you'll see it on the screen, and then you come back to plausible, and then you can bring Daniel to the stage, and I'll let you know that it's stacked correctly.
Yes, and we're actually live right now. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me bring Daniel up. Make a speaker. You have to accept being a speaker.
Okay. I'm accepting that.
Good. Is it showing?
Yeah, I see me.
No, yes. But in YouTube, what happens is sometimes it doesn't show. So it's showing well, Leanne?
There's a delay, so I'm just waiting for it. There he is. It's all good.
Yay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to Love at First Laff, the Green Room edition. And today I'm so excited because I have a fantastic guest. He's been on the podcast before. He is incredible, like an incredible writer. He's created CARNIVＡLE on HBO. He's written for the Blacklist. And he just released a book called Stupid Writer Tricks, which is hilarious. I loved every second of it. Please welcome to the stage. He's already there, but please welcome Daniel Knauf. Yay! I love those emojis. Did you notice how the emojis have sounds? Isn't that the coolest?
That is so cool.
I love that. I love it. So the way we're going to do the podcast for everybody out there, I'm going to interview Daniel, and then we're going to have a Q&A section. And after that, I'm going to ask him some more personal questions. Somebody, I think, is having something in the background. Okay, it's gone. Okay. All right. So thank you so much, Daniel, for doing this podcast and for your time.
You're welcome, Grace. It's my pleasure.
Oh, that's great. I'm so excited. I loved your book. I don't know if I already said it, but I just loved it. I was laughing my ass off. Like I was just screaming. My neighbors probably thought I was being murdered.
It's a pretty weird screenwriting book because there's stuff in it that's strictly, like how-to stuff.
Yes.
But
I have tons of questions.
then there's like just stories,
Yes.
how to behave in a meeting, how
Yes.
to take notes, what I want to do is, it was a very weird thing. I'll just answer your questions before I pontificate, but I will pontificate. What the hell?
That's totally fine.
It was, I'm working on this book project, and it's very near and dear to my heart. And I was thinking of doing, an Amazon book, Kindle direct publishing. And I realized, I need to see how this system works. So, I didn't have any manuscripts laying around. And my daughter said, well, why don't you take the essays you wrote for unmovies.com and collect those? And so it's really weird because I've got friends who are writers, and they go, oh God, they hang on to everything. It's like, oh, well, I want to have this entire collection of my papers in the Smithsonian. It's just, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll put it right next to a Gutenberg Bible. Or so it's like I've never held on to anything. I don't hold. There's entire scripts that are lost. I haven't held on to drafts. I don't hold on to anything. But the one period of my life that I actually documented pretty well was the period where I was transitioning from being an insurance broker to a professional television writer. And that, so I had this website, and I was kind of, the whole idea of it was sort of this blog before the word blog had been invented. Yeah. And I call them rants, and I would just write these essays about things I screwed up on. And it's like, guys, don't do this. So it really was the one part of my writing life that I really kind of documented. And then when I reread them, and I hadn't looked at them for 20 years, and I said, oh, this is good. This is good stuff, And so I put it in the book, and I posted on internet, on Kindle.
Yes.
Kindle Direct. I immediately burst out of the gate as a bestseller in my category.
Oh, wow.
To a best-selling author. I've looked at my royalties. I've made well over $100. And I think I can probably buy a carton of cigarettes on what I've made from this book. So I'm kind of going, well, maybe I should just get an agent and do it the old-fashioned way and get a publishing deal.
Right?
Like this Kindle Direct stuff, I don't know how that works.
Yeah, no, Amazon is like, here, 20 cents. It's just, I don't know if they keep track of it. I don't know. It's very kind of sus. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, they told me
they
could make direct deposits into my account.
Yeah.
Or they could just pay me with bazooka bubble gum.
The latter is how they do it, for sure.
Go for the cash-ish, baby.
Totally.
Anyway.
What I loved about your book is like I became it was before I finally achieved my 22-year overnight success, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because everybody, you don't hear about someone and then they blow up and it's like, oh, okay. But it took you 22 years to get there. And you talk about like the doubts and anxieties that you had before, your overnight success. So what are some of those doubts and anxieties that you had?
Well, like everybody, and people go through this, they whine about it, which is kind of stunning to me. It's like, oh, the people who were closest to me, my parents and my family, they never really gave me real support, and it's like, okay, that's because they love you. Okay. The reason they didn't really support your cockamamie idea of making a living as an artist is because, a lot of people who try that fail, and it's really, really, really hard. And they don't want to see you unhappy. They want to see you supporting yourself in some way. And so it's ironic, but it's never our family that gets totally behind us until we make it. And then they go, I knew you could do it all.
Exactly.
But my mom actually said to me, I said, I want to be a writer. And she says, well, what do you have to say?
Okay, Mom.
Really, and that's really, but it's a good question. It's a really good question, and it's like, why do I do this? And it wasn't until I've been doing it for a long, long time that I realized why I do it. And well, first of all, I think that like writers, we're wired differently, and so I think that you have this compulsion to do this. When people come up to me and they go, oh, wow, you're a writer. I've always wanted to be a writer. And it's like, yeah, well, I've always wanted to be a hummingbird, it's like you don't become a writer. You become a good writer.
Yes.
But some of the best writers I know have never written anything. They're just raconteurs. They're really good at telling a story, There are writers that don't write. It's a mentality. It's a storyteller. You're a storyteller.
Right.
And you have to do it. It's part of it's in your DNA. And we get real scientific with that. I think you have a bent for pattern recognition that most people don't have. You have hyperfocus, or the ability to hyperfocus and live inside a lie for hours at a time. These are things that you don't really learn. These are things you're sort of born with. You're really good at playing pretend. I think this is true of most artists, period. All arts. And so there's the craft of it, which is something where you take that raw, what they call talent, what I would call just it's a freakish skill set, and hone it to where what you're doing is you're trying to basically convey what's going on inside your head, outside your head. And so people understand what you're seeing and how you're seeing it. And they're seeing the connections you're making. And like, instead of just bursting out laughing as you're driving down the road with a friend and they think you're insane, and you go, well, look at that billboard, and then look at that bus bench. And isn't that funny that
Absolutely. And I love how you say, first of all, two things that caught my attention. You talk about seminars, right? Like workshops where they teach you how to logically structure a script, right? So it's weird because logically, you know, when you have this raw talent where it flows, right? It's you need the structure or the logic. They teach you how to be logical. So what is your take on that?
Well, there's a lot of in any kind of profession they try to create jargon. We did it in the insurance business, you know, and
Really?
in the writing business we do it too. And we go, oh, there's the first act, and there's the second act, and there's the third act, otherwise known as the beginning, the middle,
And end.
and you know, it's like, oh, well, you know, you got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And the beginning is usually about half as long as the middle, and then the end is usually a little less than half as long as the middle. And that's all you need to know about structure. If you can tell a joke, you can, you know, you have an understanding of structure. There's no reason to spend money on. I would say that, you know, Sid Field's book is pretty good, but you should learn the rules before you break them. I've seen movies where they do break the rules successfully, and they're stunning. I think there's a movie, it's a Brawl on Cell Block something. I forget what it is, but basically the first act is about more than half the movie is the first act, and it's a brilliant construction, and so, you know, but you know, in order to, you know, if you wanted, if you're driving a car, sometimes it makes sense to, you know, shift from, you know, second to fourth depending on your speed, but you know, you should probably learn how to work with stick shift before you do stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of people in Hollywood that kind of charge you to read your script, and they don't have any.
Yeah,
I've been there. And when you first come here, he's like, "Oh, I'll read your script," and I'm like, they haven't done anything, but they'll read your script and tell you, you know, give you notes. So, what do you think of people that do that?
In the book I call them inner child abusers. These are the lowest of the low, you know. Now I'm not talking about people who work as legitimate script consultants for production companies, you know, or for producers. If a producer came to me and said, "Can you take a look at that?" Generally, you know, it's like, "Can you take a look at this and give me some notes or your thoughts?" And they, you know, they pay me for that because I'm consulting. But if it's a person who's trying to write a script, and I've helped people out. I've mentored half a dozen people.
Wow.
And I was mentored by I had two great mentors. And the way you get mentors is you meet them, you come across them, you take a class and they're teaching it, or they're in a workshop you're in, or you kind of are polite. I had one person who spoke to me for a year online before they even ventured to say, "Hey, would you mind reading something that I wrote?" And
absolutely.
but the people who come, like, you know, add them, you know, join my Facebook, and then, you know, seconds later say, "I have the script. Can you read it?" It's like, you know, that's like handing somebody a baby that's soiled its diapers and say, "Can you hold this for 2 or 3 hours?" You know, it's like, it's an incredible imposition because it takes time to read it, takes you time to formulate notes. It's not simple to do that. If you're not if you're even remotely conscientious about doing it, and take it seriously. And it's a big ask. It's a really big ask. And it's like, I could spend 3 or 4 hours writing, and I get unconscionable fees for doing that. Like, and if somebody tries to charge you, "Oh yeah, it's $250 for me to read your script and give you notes, or it's $400 for me to read your script and give you notes," it's like, if I charged for that, it would be about $8,000 for me to read your script and give you notes. That's what I would charge a producer, you know. So anybody you're getting what you're paying for, which is, you know, stinky advice from somebody who's it's the blind leading the blind, and I wouldn't waste your money. Anybody who asks you, and even things that are screenwriting contests, or there's, you know, oh yeah, give us $250 and send us your script, and then you go home with a Happy Meal toy with your name on it. It's like, come on, get real. That's not going to move the needle.
No.
What it comes down to is just really hard work.
Yes.
Taking classes, getting involved in seminars, getting involved in workshops, getting your thinking and getting. I didn't know anybody in the business. I had no relatives. It's just getting read and getting good and understanding that your first script out of the gate is probably not going to be great, and neither is the second one. It's only when you've gotten to make script number 7 or 8 where you really kind of know what you're doing. And sitting down and rewriting the same script over and over for 5 years is just like, that's not the way. You finish it, you set it aside, you start script number 2, and then maybe you come back to script number 1 and you take a look at it again, and then you go to script number 3, and then you come back to script number 2 and look at that. You just keep this leapfrogging going, but the whole idea is just to get better at it and read scripts. There's a ton of scripts available online. Your money's much better spent if you're spending money to download a script of a movie that you like. It's this kind of stuff you want to write. That's a good spend.
I agree. Reading scripts is a great learning experience.
It's very instructive.
It's amazing.
But try to read fairly recent scripts.
That's all.
As fun as reading like North by Northwest is, or Casablanca. I mean, these are both really beautiful scripts, but the format's completely different, and you don't want to be writing, scripts like Orson Welles was writing scripts.
Absolutely.
Every shot is down there. It's like, extreme close up.
Agreed. And what is your creative process like? How do you approach an idea, a script? I'm so curious to know.
What happens is, more often than not, somebody gives me a bunch of money and gives me something they want me to do. That's my creative process. Show
me the money.
The other one is people go, I remember taking classes in college, and they go, oh, this is what, this was what was inside Hemingway's head when he wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls, or this is what was in Melville's head when he wrote Moby Dick. And it's like, now I know what was in Melville's head when he wrote Moby Dick. It's like, I gotta feed my family. I gotta finish this. I got a deadline. My publisher wants it by this time. That's why, at the end of the day, you're writing to survive. You got to eat. But that aside, what were the things I write, the types of things I write? Usually, I have a kernel of an idea, and I kind of think about it for a while, and then I come back to it. And it's sort of like, you get this fruit tree, and some of the fruit is getting more and more ripe, and at a certain point, it's ready to go, and you go, what am I going to do next? And you go, I'll do that one, and so I always have 5 or 6 concepts sort of floating around, and some of them were novels, and some of them were movies, some of them were television series. I've got a website. It's called Laff-The, and you can download like a whole bunch of my decks, my series decks, my Bibles, and pilots that never aired. So it's all those. It's the island of it's the island of forgotten toys.
Oh no, Daniel's mind. Yes.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it's my favorite stuff. I did this version of. If you imagine if the Coen brothers did The Invisible Man, I wrote that version. It's the craziest version of The Invisible Man you'll ever read. It's up. The script's just up. You can read it. So most of my stuff you got access to.
Oh, that's great. What was the website again?
KNAUF.TV.
Okay, great. I want to talk about pitching to the networks, because that's a whole experience on its own.
Yeah.
I love, I'm going to read what you wrote about Fox. It's hilarious. Fox didn't like it on Monday. By Wednesday, they loved it. My idiot agent called, excited. They've done a complete 360, he gushed. No, I corrected him. They've done a 180. We don't want them to do a 360.
Yeah.
Friday, they've done a 360. So nonstop, then sat on a shelf for 6 months. So until somebody at Fox realized they loved it after all. I was called in to meet with Mr. S for notes on the rewrite. So that's an insane process.
Oh yeah, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. That's was for features. One of the things that drew me to TV was that experience with Mr. S.
Yeah.
Because you do a feature, and I would get these notes, and it'd be like, my favorite one was on a movie I wrote called Blind Justice, which was basically just a Western version of Zatoichi. It's about a blind gunslinger with Armand Assante. It was the first really produced credit I had. And the director came to the first creative meeting, and he says, what I really want is, more brown.
What?
What? More brown? Like, what does that mean? I don't even know. But when you do TV, because you've got such pressing deadlines, generally the people in TV give you very executable notes. And they're not always great notes. There's a million articles in every screenwriter magazine about the 10 dumbest notes I ever got. Nobody ever writes the article of like the greatest note I ever got. The note that I was kicking myself in the ass all the way home saying, why didn't I think of that?
Oh my
And
God.
that note, by the way, can come from anybody. It can come from the big shot producer. It can come from the guy who's handling catering. Okay. You got to have your ears open. You got to have your ego out of the picture and just be going, wow, that would be cool. And you can't go, yeah, but I don't want to change it because it's hard work. It's like, no, you got to make this stuff as good as it can be. It's your body of work. It's what you're leaving behind. Why would you not make it as good as you can make it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And also you touch upon being difficult in Hollywood, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
I've been branded as that on and off.
Oh, you have?
Oh yeah, I've got that. Yeah. That's called having
your book,
if you have standards, you're difficult.
Yes, exactly. You have very straightforward opinions, which I love, and I was laughing so hard. And yes, I can see why they would label you that. But what is considered a difficult person in Hollywood?
Somebody who will say no.
Boundaries, you mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've done very few hard no's in the course of my career. I mean, I'll generally get a note and I'll say, what's he really saying? I mean, he sees something, they see something that's bumping, but if they could articulate it, they wouldn't need me. And so it's a goddamn good thing they can't articulate it, isn't it? So what's the real note? What's bothering them? And one of my favorite stories about that was Chris Matheson wrote. I forget his partner's name. It's terrible, but they wrote Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And the note they got was, well, gosh, Bill and Ted sound exactly the same. It's like the same voice. There's no difference between Bill and Ted, which was part of the joke. Because, I mean, they're, that was the time, and that's where they were from. And they were like mental twins. And
right.
And so they went, oh, okay. So what they did was they didn't change a line of dialogue. They just changed the descriptions. Well, Ted is the impetuous one, and Bill is a little bit more. They changed some character descriptions, and then the people at the studio went, oh, great, it works now. It's like, so sometimes I mean, the one I had was I had a script where people were going, oh, the main character, he's not big enough. He doesn't feel prominent enough, and so I kept changing it and making him bigger and bigger until he was just teetering on becoming a cartoon character, and I was going, oh my God, I can't make this guy bigger without just making him an idiot, and then I realized, oh, you know what I did? I overwrote all of the supporting characters. So I went back and I sort of pulled them down a bit. And then all of a sudden it was like my protagonist rose to the top. And that's what really listen to the notes and realize there's something behind it. The notes that are truly frustrating, though, is when it's like you're doing your 23rd draft and you get some guy who goes, this part really bumped for me, or this line really bumped for me. And you're going, well, it survived 18 rewrites and you didn't say anything for 18 times. But now suddenly this line is bumping for you. Okay. I guess we got to look out for all those people who are going to see the movie 18 times, right? I'm not even going to see the movie 18 times. It's like, get real. I mean, if you're still making, granular notes after 24 or 25 drafts, you're just justifying your existence, at the studio or in the room. That's nonsense. It's a little frustrating, and sometimes you have to go with it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't mean you have to like it, But yeah, that's why we're overpaid, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So one thing that I love to do is to write dialogue. I work with Barney Cohen, right, where we wrote stuff together. Uh-huh. And he's the structure person, so he's like the scene person. So it's like this scene, and I go home and the dialogue just flows through me. And it got my attention that you say that you hear the characters talk. I do the same. I'm like, I'm not a mental issue.
I'm certifiable when I'm writing. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
You hear them talk. Like I hear them.
I mentioned in the book about the best writing class most screenwriters can take would be an acting class. You should take, even if you're painfully shy and the idea of getting up on stage terrifies you and you're going to suck at it. Nothing gives you insight into the dramatic process better than getting up and trying to do it. And it gives you respect for the performers. I've talked to, there's so many writers that, she really sucks. And it's like, no, the stuff you gave her sucked, There's nothing like being, getting up and doing stuff that sucks and trying to make it work. To sort of humble you as a dramatist, So yeah, what I do, and that was a major breakthrough for me because I had real trouble with character. Grace, it was like I was really good at packing the trunk, but I just didn't. And it was like this epiphany when I started taking acting classes. And I realized, what I'm doing here this is just like improv, only I'm by myself and I'm writing it down.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And so when I hear some people say to me, oh yeah, imagine this, and they put their hands up like, oh, this is what's happening on the screen. That's not what happens with me. What happens with me is I'm in the scene. I'm sitting and I'm surrounded by my characters, and I'm basically trying to write down everything they're saying. I'm transcribing. Yes. I'm not really writing when things are going really well. Now later the editor will come out and I'll start losing couplets and things like that to tighten up scenes. But generally, to me, the world's easiest thing to write is a monologue, which was what I did a lot of on the Blacklist. I mean, a ton of monologues for James. And I got James Spader saying my words. It's going to be really great. Hear his voice in your head when you're writing. Just how he's going to do it is read, and I it would almost. I mean, it wouldn't. It shouldn't take that much more than, maybe twice as much. It shouldn't take more than an hour to write a monologue. The more you're picking over it, the more false it's going to feel when it's spoken, performed.
100%. Do you think that talent can be learned, or is it innate and then you hone it?
No, I think it can it's like a muscle in a way. You get better at getting out of your own way, I think. A lot of people go, oh, well, I think I can edit while I write, and to me, it took me a while to learn this, but that's like stomping on the gas and the brakes at the same time. You're gonna make a lot of smoke and noise, but you're not gonna go anywhere. So what you have to do is you just have to turn open up the car door and shove the editor out, and you just have to basically just write it. Just write it like you're being chased through a jungle by a bunch of guys with machetes.
That's what it feels like.
Later, I mean, just write it and screw it up and use placeholders. Oh, this is a piece of shit scene, but I'm just going to get through it. I'm going to power through it. I'll rewrite it later. And then what happens is that scene you're reading it, you go, yeah, that wasn't that bad. This works. And then the scene you were going, oh, that's a great scene. I really nailed it. It's just shit. You don't know. You're not making qualitative decisions at all when you're writing. You just draft out the first draft as fast as you can, and then go in and start editing. That's a completely different part of your brain work.
Absolutely. Well, same with stand-up, right? You just go with the flow when you're on stage, and you leave the editor out, or the critic too. It's like,
oh yeah. Stand-up has to be the most terrifying form of performance. I mean, other than like tightrope walking or some shit like that, motorcycle jumping or something.
Yeah, that's terrifying. Yes, absolutely.
But standing up in front of it's just you. You got nobody to blame it on when you take
nothing. No. If you I know. Yeah, that's why a lot of
it's really sad because every drama writer I know thinks they're funny, and it's like
no,
they're not.
No. But for drama, you have to put a little bit of comedy, not funny, but kind of mix a little bit, because if not, it's too much, I think. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it depends. If you don't, people are laughing in the wrong places. So, you're designing this stuff to generate or elicit a human response, whether fear or tension or laughter or whatever you're doing. Yeah. And sometimes you just need a release. If you have relentless tension, then people don't have the pressure valves. Hitchcock knew that. He did it beautifully. And I just watched Wait Until Dark. I hadn't watched it in 20 years, and there's humor in that. It's dark, but it's still it's parts where you just sort of kind of chuckle. But you kind of need that. You need to change it up.
I agree. Yes. In your book, you advise new writers to write poetry because of the economy of words, right? Like in stand-up, that's what we learn. Economy of words is crucial because you want laughs per minute, right? So I think as a stand-up, but for me, the economy of words, I never have an issue. I mean, the opposite. I might be too many, I need to put a little bit more words. But so how do you think poetry or stand-up comedy or anything, that requires economy of words will help a screenwriter?
Well, you've got a limited amount of real estate. You've got you've got 42 minutes for a network series for a, advertiser sponsored type thing. So, what that boils down to is it's very, you have to exercise a tremendous amount of discipline, and you have to have a great deal of precision, and at the same time it has to come off like it's just people are coming up with a line as they as boom so I think that poetry enforces a certain kind of precision and definitely economy.
Yes.
And I've actually wrote a poetry book.
Oh, how nice!
Yeah, I read a long time ago, but it's and I read my poetry. That's a good thing too, because that's kind of in the same arena as stand up. But I think it's just writing haikus writing a good haiku is the hardest thing you can do.
It is so hard. Yes.
Oh, 575, easy. Right. Yeah, it's super simple. To convey something like meaningful, you know. But yeah, I think that's a good. I think it's a good exercise for a writer.
Definitely. And also,
Poetry is spoken, so
right.
so is dialogue, and so it gives you an idea of what you can get away with, because dialogue is stylized. It's not really. I've got a whole chapter on that. It's
Yes,
not
you do.
really human speech. It's
Yeah.
highly stylized. It's just a hat trick because you're making it seem to be normal human speech, but it is not at all. You know.
Yeah. If not, it would be. You wrote a whole passage like that. It was hilarious.
Oh, the two guys talking in the booth.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
No, that guy. You know, he was singing that song. You know.
Yeah.
You know, the guy with the eye.
No, the character knows who it is. Yeah, no, you can't go around.
Oh
like
yeah, that guy. Yeah.
100%. And also, I think poetry, there's a musicality to words. Poetry gives you that sense of the music to words, which for a screenwriter, I think it's very important.
I think it's important to make it easy for the actor to say. You know,
that too.
And when the actor is stumbling over a line, I'm not precious at all. I mean, they're the ones who have to. They're the cargo ships. You know, I'm putting the cargo in. If the cargo is going to sink the ship, then that's not going to do either one of us any good. So, if an actor has trouble with a line, I'd rather, you know, it's one of two things: either you miswrote it, or he doesn't understand what's motivating it. Often, if you tell him what's motivating it, then the light bulb goes on. They go, oh, now I know. Okay, I got it. So, I mean, I've been fortunate because I worked with some pretty good actors, and you know, if you're doing your job right, you're not going to have many parentheticals. You know, I mean, nothing kills me more than I read a script and it says, "Joe, angrily, go fuck yourself!" Exclamation.
Well, that's
like
redundant.
What are you going to put in there? Gently?
Oh, God.
Cheerfully?
Yeah, totally. I know. Yeah, script where like people describe like it's a novel. I'm like, no, dude, just go to the action. Just have the character say something, you know, or do something. Yeah, it's crazy.
Keep most of your stuff running down the middle of the page. And in scene descriptions, you know, try your best. Poetry comes in handy for scene descriptions.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's like you could describe a office, you know, okay, well, it's, you know, this mahogany paneling and rich green carpet and a big desk and this. You go and do 2 paragraphs on the decor in this office. Or you could say, this is an office that every psychology graduate student has wet dreams about. Yeah, there. Now hand that off to your set designer. He knows just what you're talking about. Yeah. Another thing is that there's people that are, you know, a set designer spends his whole life thinking about sets. You know, I'm going to tell him how to, you know, what you do is you hire the right set designer, and then you don't have to write all that stuff. You just give them a brief idea of what you're going for, and then you move on. You don't. This is what I call back of the aspirin bottle, you know, type of stuff where it's super specific about what a character's wearing. You know, I mean, get real. It's, you know, he's wearing a designer suit. End of story. You know, he's wearing a Tom Ford, you know, a Tom Ford camel blazer with, you know, I mean, come on. Don't.
Yeah. Exactly. It has to serve the script, right? The character.
It has to serve the script, and it shouldn't insult all the other artists that are working on it. Give them a little room. Let them create. It's like Christmas every morning when you're a showrunner. Somebody comes in with pictures, and you go, "Hey, look, I designed your sets." And you go, "Yoo-hoo, look at that." That's like being a schizophrenic and finding out that like there's really guys following you around, or you know, look at all these people I've got. You know, like they're working now. They're feeding their families, and they're having fun doing it because they get to create. And I'm not gonna, you know, if they're not if they're not serving my vision, and they'll get 2 or 3 tries, and I go, oh shoot, I cast the wrong guy, and then it's like now I got to fire him or her, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
Only really had to do that once. I'm just very careful about who I hire, and make sure that they're really good at what they do, and then just let them do that, because I don't spend time thinking about costume design. I get somebody who lives and breathes it. They get up in the morning, they're thinking about costume design. They go to bed, they're thinking about costume design. Who am I to sit there and tell them how to design a costume?
Exactly.
Oh, could we go with a sash instead of a belt? Shut up.
Too specific. Stop it. Right?
Yeah. What I find is usually most of the surprises I have when I'm in production are good surprises. Very few bad surprises.
Nice. That's a good experience right there.
Yeah.
You also advise writers to live their life, right?
Oh yeah.
Love the list that you give. Oh my God, it's hilarious. You guys have to buy this book. It's so funny. It's like a long list with the most outrageous stuff.
Go to jail.
I know.
Spend an evening in the drunk tank. That's always a good thing.
It's hilarious. And you mix it with like, never use the empty adjective, very quiet. So what really is like, what? Okay.
Yeah. Don't smoke green cigars.
Yes.
Don't order anything off the menu with the word delight or surprise.
Yes. Oh, surprise. Yeah. I love that.
To me, the thing is, there's too many people who they go to UCLA Film School, they get a job at low level job as a writer's assistant, and then 5 years later they're running a show, and they have not lived. They have not lived.
Exactly.
I was really super lucky. I didn't make it until I was in my mid 40s, and I mean, it's like by then I excavated a story well like nobody's business. I had children, and I'd had tragedies and triumphs, and I had a lot of life behind me. I mean, I look at guys like Charles Bukowski. He didn't break through until he was almost 60.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think Post Office, he was like 60 when it was published. And so, I mean, he had a story well like nobody's business. So, what it is it's like nobody wants to watch a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And I hate being in rooms where they're going, oh, this is going to be our Man on Fire episode. And it's like, no, it's not. It's just going to be a shitty version of Man on Fire because, it's like, and who wants, so I used to freak people out. I'd go with like really obscure, like French New Wave classics. I'd go, oh yeah, so we're going for a Knife in the Water episode. Everybody look up, what's that? Knife in the Water. Polanski, you've seen it, come on. But
That's great.
yeah, I don't like to. Yeah, some of it informs you. I mean, I'll watch a movie and I'll go, oh wow, that's a really smart way to cut there. That's a good transition. I'm gonna have to steal that. Just not steal the material, but just steal the technique. It's like that was a really good technique. That was very effective. But I think for the most part, to actually, be that your whole, I mean, you've got to have some context. You got to have some stuff to say. I mean, I can't say how many times that I've been stuck where it's like I go with something where it actually happened, where I witnessed it, and it's experiential, and it's never been written before, and that's the only shot you've got at inspiring the ecstasy of recognition in your audience, is where they see something and they've never quite seen that before, and everything kind of comes together. The actor's performance, the words, the way it's shot comes together, and they go, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who felt that way. Oh my God. And then they look around, and then a bunch of people in the theater with the same expressions on their face, and they realize lots of people have had that, and I thought I was the only one. And it makes you part of humanity again.
Yes.
And you're not going to get that by doing, I'm going to do a scene just like the scene from Indiana Jones, and You might get their blood pressure up, whatever. But I'm going for I'm out for like bigger fish than that. I can get somebody's blood pressure up, really easy.
Not a
I
problem.
want to move people. I want to change. I want them to kind of come out of it going, I never thought of it that way. Or maybe giving them, it gives them a little insight into their brother-in-law. Like maybe that's why he's so mean to me, whatever. But just something that, that they come away with some little bit of wisdom. I wrote this speech. It was for the Blacklist. It was you can find it on YouTube. Look up the Red Reddington suicide speech. And I just got my third post over the course of the years since that speech aired from somebody who said that speech saved my life.
Wow.
That is the gold standard. That is like why I do this. At the end of the day, it's okay. I made a difference there. That's, and I think that that you can't buy that, so.
That's beautiful. You tell your story and your experiences, and then you can heal someone or prevent somebody from, committing suicide. That is just.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that was inspired by something that had happened to me, and it was a completely different circumstance and everything, but it was a conclusion. It was a piece of wisdom, very hard won by me, that made me understand something, and so I had an opportunity. I'm not, using Red Reddington, I'm not shoving the words into his mouth. It's just there was a circumstance and it made sense, and so it's like, okay, this is something that is being informed by my own personal story. Well, so here it goes, and James knocked it out of the park, as he always does. He's a wonderful actor.
Amazing. So what do you think, I'm curious, because you talk about it in your book, but what do you think of doing like free gigs for exposure, which is a very Hollywood culture thing, like you do it for the exposure, it's going to be distributed.
Betty Davis once, I think Betty Davis was quoted as saying, exposure is something that the coroner lists on your death certificate as a cause of death. So, I mean, I love that. Listen, it depends on the situation. Okay. If it's Joe Blow, who you're, having a chat with in the corner booth, at Denny's, and he's a nobody and he has no credits, but that's like the Beatles wrote a song about it. It's called "Baby You Can Drive My Car." I mean, it's like, well, this guy really doesn't have anything. He has no juice. He can't really offer you anything. If Will Smith asks you to do him a fave, it would be pretty smart to do Will Smith a fave.
That's true.
But guys like Will Smith aren't going to ask people to write for free.
No.
It really depends on the circumstances. It depends on it. But I mean, look, you should be writing stuff you want to write, not something somebody wants you to write. If somebody has this really bitchin' IP, and you've always wanted to write it, and you go, okay, yeah, I'm your guy. And he says, I can't pay you right now. And you go, okay, well, maybe I want to write that as long as you control the IP. We're in good shape. So these are business decisions, But I think you just must go through this with knowing that there's a lot of really sleazy characters out there that want you to write for free, and you're really wasting your time.
Yes.
And you're being terribly exploited. And that's 90% of the time. So,
yes.
Yeah, if somebody says, I would like you to do this. I mean, I remember having a guy ask me that one really early, way early. I was going to Pasadena City College. This guy says, I have this really good idea. You could write it. And we go out together with it. And I said, well, how much are you going to pay me? And he looked at me like I was crazy. It's like, Okay, so let me get this straight. It's like what you want to do is you want to, let's say, it's like you're okay. Let's go into the car dealer. There's a BMW dealer across the street. Let's go over there and say, hey, that's a really nice like 5 Series. I like it. That M5 is really awesome. What do you say you give it to me? And I drive it all over town. And if somebody buys it because they see me driving it, I'll give you half the money. You gonna go for that? I mean, really? Is that a legitimate offer? I don't think so. And that's what they're asking you to do. You go do all the work, and then I'll take half the money.
No, that's no, not a good deal.
Yeah,
I agree. I also love how you talk about how in Hollywood they use the word genius. And
better than dog shit squared. Yeah, that's that.
Okay. So give me your take about being called a genius. How did that feel? What do you think about the whole thing of being called a genius?
Well, when I did Carnival, I mean, I don't think a day went by, especially when it was script day, where we'd be distributing drafts, and I'd be just walking around, just looking at people while they're reading and seeing how engaged they were. Because if you can engage an industry group, see if you see them and they got their highlighters out and they're just highlighting all the crap they got to do in the script, you're not really engaging them. But on Carnival, often they would not be doing it. They'd get sucked into the scripts. They'd just like page turning, and I'd be going, yeah, got that one. and I would think on probably once a week, maybe twice a week, one of these people would walk up to me and say, I got to say this. I just got to say this, man. I got to say this. You're a genius, man. And it's like my hand would just drift like kind of to my back pocket to see if my wallet was still there. You can't take shit seriously. If you do, you're dead. Creatively, you're done. You are done. The minute you take crap like that seriously, you're done. All the people who made you as good as you are all the people who told you how badly you sucked when you started out. And you said, yeah, you think I suck? Just wait, Those are the people that made you good. A person walking up to you once you've made it saying you're a genius, it's like, come on, No, Michelangelo's a genius. Leonardo's a genius. Picasso's a genius. Maybe I am a genius. Maybe in 100 years, people will still be watching my shit. I don't know. I'm just trying to get it done right. As good as I can do it. And so, yeah. You start thinking you're a genius. God, you see it happen. You see it happen with so many artists, and it's just it's instantaneous. I won't name names, but they're great. And they just have this explosive kind of success, especially actors, performers. Yeah. They have this explosive success, and then all of a sudden they just start doing these just awful things, and it's because they live in a world of yes. They live in yes world. And so they're screwed. Not every notion, it's like not every, you wipe your butt and you look at the toilet paper. It's not the Pieta, it's like, and that's what these people kind of get.
I can't with you. Yeah, but that's so true. And they use that word, so loosely, right? Too. But they use it when you
they use it all the
serve
time.
them. Yeah, no, but
It's
when you
genius,
serve them. Yeah, genius. It loses its value completely.
Oh no, it has zero currency.
Yeah, zero. Absolutely. So you talk about the Knauf's theory of Hollywood relativity. What is that? Do you remember that?
Do I remember that? Knauf's? Okay, you're gonna have to give me a little.
Don't worry, let's skip it.
Oh, okay. Now I'm curious.
I'll send you. I have flashcards of you.
Oh, that was that chapter I wrote when I was doing the shrooms. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. No, I don't know.
But it's good. Good.
Hollywood relativity. I've just killed my career by saying it's a joke.
Yes, I'm sure. I know it is.
Joke platform. It's a comedy. Yeah.
Yes. So you talk about development hell, right?
Yeah.
Like after you sell your script, they you just go through that hell. How can you avoid the hell, or at least manage it emotionally and creatively so it doesn't give you hell?
Well, the first thing you got to do is understand everybody who's involved in this wants to make it better.
Yeah.
And know that. When you're going around, you're going, they're trying to ruin my script. And it's like, oh yeah, that's just what they want to do. They want to spend all this money on something and then have it be bad. So understand that God bless them. They want it to be better. Okay. So everybody is on the side of making the material better, or in most cases. In some cases, they're just aggrandizing, egomaniac psychotics that just, I don't know. But there's those, but they're more the exception than the rule. But everybody's trying to help you. Everybody's trying to make the material better. And your job is to choose the places where you're going to dig your heels in and say, no, and you can. A lot of times you get notes where you just don't execute it, and then they call you up and they say, hey, I gave you this note. And you go, oh yeah, you're right. I'm so sorry. I'll get it on the next pass. But 9 times out of 10, they don't.
They forget. What is it? They forget.
Yeah, it was, there's things you learn. You go, okay, well, I really am not going to do this. And I'm not going to make a big deal out of not doing it. I'm just going to see if they remember it. It's kind of like, showing up at court to see if the cop shows up for your traffic ticket. Sometimes they don't, you're good. So then the other ones are, it doesn't really make much of a difference whether the person's wearing a blue sweater or a yellow sweater. So fine, if that's your contribution for the day, fine. And I'll make sure the person has on a yellow cashmere sweater, and then and I'm talking about the bad notes, and there's all kinds of good notes, but it's the bad notes. The other way to deal with that is sometimes you just have to say, no, I'm not going to do that, and the reason I'm not going to do that is because it's not motivated. It's out of the clear blue and the audience won't understand it. I don't know why you're insisting on this. That happens very rarely, by the way.
Yeah, I bet.
But I did have a guy, I won't, again, name names because, I like to work. But,
yes.
He was a big mucky muck, and he was British. British people just kill me. I'm an Anglophobe is what I am. Really? And so he's on the phone. He's giving me his notes. He's really upset. I want you to do this. And, and at a certain point, I was saying, look, here's why I'm not going to do it, because the shot's unmotivated. There's nothing linking it to anything. He's asking me for a shot. Show this thing. I need an insert here. And I'm saying, nobody's going to understand that because it hasn't come up. It hasn't come up yet.
Yeah.
They're not going to get it. And I don't want to do it. So this is silly, And he goes, just fucking do it. And he's in London and I'm in Los Angeles. And I said, I'll tell you what, man. I said, if you're willing to get on an airplane, fly out here and put a gun to the back of my head and threaten to blow my brains all over the screen of my Apple computer, I'll do it. But otherwise, go fuck yourself.
Ooh, damn.
He understood that.
He got it.
And I'm sure that might have branded me as difficult. But yeah, it was just one of those things. This was not even about that. It was not even about that. It was not about the note. This was about him trying to exercise power he didn't have. And and so sometimes you have to sort of put your foot down on that and say, no, I don't take dictation from you. You're not in that position, and so that was just a pissing match kind of thing,
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes. So we are going to open the floor for Q&A. So So
who's
I'm
here?
gonna,
Can I see these people on screen?
why don't you guys raise your hand if you have a question, and then I'll call out your name and then you ask, so that will make it easier.
Good. I'd like to see your horrified, your completely horrified reaction to everything.
Oh.
Mike, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Well, it's not a question, but
It's a statement. Well, we lost him.
Oh, we lost him. Yeah, he's having. I just looked at the messaging, and he is having problems. Yeah, he says, "Hold on a minute." Okay, we'll wait. In the meantime, Leanne, do you have a question? You raised your hand.
Yeah, I do. I actually have two questions if there's time. But the first question I'm curious about, you said you write from a lot of times from personal experience. How often do you take character, like big character ideas, and implement them to your story? And if so, do people in your inner circle go, I know who that's based on?
Very rarely do I write somebody straight. It usually is, it's usually an amalgam of, am I saying that right? Amalgam? Is that the right word?
I guess.
Oh, okay.
You're asking a Latina. I don't know. I don't know that many words in English.
Amalgamo. Anyway, it's a mixture of a lot of different people that I've met. Occasionally, though, there are characters that their voices in my head until we cast it, but their voice is very much somebody I know, and so it's usually a mix of various people I've known or met or am aware of, and sometimes it'll be like an actor, or sometimes it'll be somebody I've seen, that's some sort of a game show host or something like that. I mean, it's when it comes to the character's voice, they usually just start talking, and I just write it down. It's kind of magical. That's sort of a flaky answer, I know, but the whole process is kind of magical.
Can I ask the second question?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
So I'm curious about how you write. Do you write pen to paper, or are you usually on a computer? And which do you prefer?
I actually use giant stone tablets and a chisel. And
yes.
That way, when they give notes, I go, I really can't make that change. I just go right on the computer. I mean, when I first started, I was a health insurance broker, and I had access to a word processing equipment, and it was like the world's greatest thing. But even before that, I used a typewriter. So, yeah,
right.
It just saves a step. I mean, it's hard enough to build pyramids. If you could get a cheat, then great. It's a legit cheat. Just start typing away. But I know people who write longhand, and I always am a little puzzled by that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, anybody else have a question? Dave.
All right, Daniel. Hello.
Yeah.
What?
I feel like I'm a Brady Bunch.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was. So we got Mike and we got Carol over here. So it's going to be a two-parter. So the first part is what or who inspired you to become a screenwriter? And then the second part is please talk about your experience working with Marvel and overall getting to work with your son on a project.
Okay, you might have to remind me of the second part.
Okay.
The second part I'll answer first because it's a funny story. I got a call after I did Carnival. I got a call from Marvel. They said, we'd really like you to do one of our characters. And who would you like to do? And I said, well, I don't want to do anybody who has any like little tiny wings, like on their ankles or on their neck or their head. I don't like little wings sticking out. That's weird. And they said, well, who do you? I said, I'd kind of like to do Iron Man. Iron Man, because this was before the Iron Man movie came out. It was like Iron Man was sort of a, character. And so I said, I got one condition though, because I just seen too many people who go, oh, I'm going to transcend the comic book. And it's like, no, the comic book doesn't need any transcending. It's its own thing. It's got a fan base, and we need to respect that. We need to respect the character's backstory and so forth. And I don't know. I mean, look, when I was growing up, if you were older than 12 years old and you were caught reading a comic book, they'd just kick you to death out in the parking lot. You know, I mean, that was for kids. And so my son, though, was a huge comic book fan, and he was a writer. And I said, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it. If you don't mind, I'd like my son to collaborate with me on it. They said, no, that's fine. And that was just to keep me honest. So I didn't make any transcendent mistakes, you know. And so I wanted to make sure that I didn't blow it, that I didn't do something I thought was really, you know, new and interesting, but it was old hat too, you know. He knew the format, he knew the platform. And so I called him up and I go, hey, Charlie, guess what? Marvel wants me to do Iron Man. He goes, oh, that's so awesome. I said, guess what? He says, what? I said, I told him I won't do it without you. So it's going to be us. We're going to work together. And he goes, you asshole. I go, what? Fuck you, man. Fuck you. I go, what? It was April 1st. I didn't realize it. He thought I was And I said, no, this is real, dude.
That's too funny.
He wrote all the first drafts, and then I would sit down with him and I would basically go through it and we'd be making changes together. I'd be saying, okay, you need to exploit this. It was like a very educational situation. It was like a master class for him. So, and I learned a lot about comic books too. So it was not just a one-way street. What was the other part of the question? The first part.
First part was what and or who inspired you to become a screenwriter?
I just realized, I was thinking about it, and sometimes memories come flowing back. And I remember I was a kid, and I think, I don't know, 12 years old or 15, I don't know, somewhere in there, you know. And my parents decided that we're all going to go to Mexico to a place called Guaymas for a family trip. And we went down there and we're staying in this resort. And at the time, the resort had been taken over by the cast and crew of a big studio film called Lucky Lady with it wasn't a very good movie, but it was Gene Hackman and Burt Reynolds and Liza Minnelli and Bobby Benson, of all people. But every night these people would sit in this on this terrace and they'd have dinner, and the director was holding forth, and they were all chatting and having a good time, and it was like all the keys were sitting at the table, and it was just like a party. And they'd go off and do some night shooting. Some little groups of them would go off, and then they'd come back and have some more, you know, Mexican beer and whatever was, you know, on the table. And it was just like really kind of magical. And I ended up they saw me, you know, eavesdropping and walking past the table quite a lot. And they asked me to join them. And I spent a lot of time talking to stuntmen. Stuntmen are really interesting to talk to. And I realized, I think I want to be a part of this circus, you know? So that really did, in a big way, kind of sort of made me aspire to be part of this, you know, this amazing collaboration, this thing of people building together, everybody coming from a different discipline and bringing whatever they had to the party and hopefully creating something wonderful, you know? So, yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Yes,
Soon to be a major motion picture. That'll be in one of my scripts. Anyway.
Okay, yeah. Before I ask the question, I just want to say I abruptly got sorry for cutting everyone off, but I had to go in the kitchen and get a drink of water. Anyways, what I wanted to ask you is, how long have you been doing this type of business?
This business?
Yes.
I started writing. I was an insurance broker. I was feeding a family, and I stopped writing. And I started writing again after I had a complete breakdown. I've found that if you're a writer, if you're an artist, and you don't do your art, it's kind of like being a shark. You got to swim.
Yeah.
And if you stop doing it, you go a little mad, and I did. And so I ended up having a major breakdown when I was like 27 years old, and I started immediately. And so I started writing when I was seriously writing. And I was writing short stories mostly. I was doing prose, and I did that for a while. And I kept doing that, and I just wanted to get better. There were some workshops. The American Film Institute Alumni Association had some pretty good workshops, and there were classes at UCLA Extension that I took, and there was the Screenwriters Network was a big, writers network. And I created this website called Unmovies, and I posted all my stuff, and it did all the rants that went into the book, stupid writer tricks. And at a certain point, I just said, hey, you know what? I met two kinds of people. You go to these workshops, and there's two kinds of people there. There's people there who were just trying to get better, But then there's these people there who were going, oh, they're always talking about the parties they went to and the premieres they went to and the this they went to and the that they went to and how they made this contact, and they're super into networking. And yeah, that's one way in. That's great. But the last thing I wanted to do is find myself, inside having no idea what I was doing. So it's like, but I just did it. I just kept doing it. I think I finally sold my first real script. And had my first screen credit, and it was a Western of all things called Canaan's Way. And I sold that. My brother called me up and he said, yeah, I know this guy. He wants to buy Blue Cross plan. I said, I don't do individuals, and I just do groups. He says, no, this guy's a film producer. And I said, oh, okay. Well, it turned out it was Neil Moritz, who went on to do all the Fast and Furious movies and stuff. And Neil and his partner David Heyman, who did all the Harry Potter stories. This before they were, big. They were struggling producers, and I mentioned I was a screenwriter, and he said, "Really? What are you working on?" And I said, "I'm working on this thing about a blind gunfighter." Oh, that's kind of cool, how far into it are you? I said, I think I'm like 35 pages into it, and so then I went home and I looked, and I was like 5 pages into it. That's what, And then he called me. Says, are you done yet? He called me like 5 times. Asked me, and so I had to write this script, and so that's how I kind of broke in.
Awesome, thank you.
The first time I broke in, then I caromed off of the, I caromed right off of the stratosphere and then out into space again before I was able to come back and then discovered on Carnivàle, So.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else has a question? Howard.
Any concern with the AI?
No. I mean, you can see the shit from a mile away. I mean, I'm not that concerned about it. I don't, it's like, it's pattern recognizing, if the thing can write interesting stories that come together and make sense and that people can relate to, then wow, looks like we're all out of work. I mean, it's the kind of thing. What is worrying about it going to gain you? Can an AI play chess better than I can? Yeah, but you know what? Chess isn't as hard as doing a successful stand-up set. As many people know, and it's a very complex. It's a very complex endeavor writing a script, and the shit you do, the shit that makes a script memorable is the stuff that has no precedent, the stuff that's truly kind of original. You're going, oh my god, you're not going, oh, that's just like what they did in here, and that's what I don't think AI can really cover that stuff. I think it would, at best, I think they'll write like most kind of hack writers do, which means that like their AI will probably, in the next few years will be perfectly up to doing about 90% of television, because there's just a lot of hackers working in television. I mean, it doesn't scare me. You know why?
Why?
Because I'm a genius.
Yes. Well,
I'm going to do it anyway. I'm not doing this because I get paid for it. I mean, I have to do it. So
I understand.
The boyfriend raised his hand.
Who raised their hand? Oh, the boyfriend.
Yeah.
Sorry, we forgot about you, Brian. Yes.
So does your creative process change when you're writing a script versus poetry or novels or books or anything else? Or is it a similar process for all the different types of writing that you create?
It's a similar process in that it's like there's a rough thing, and then you do that and you're not editing. It's like a sketch. If I was doing, I used to do art when I was younger, and when I did art, you'd do just like a very loose sketch, and then you don't start it on one corner of the canvas and start painting with fine brushes. You kind of have to work your way into the thing by revising. And I wrote the first real novel I've ever written is just now, and it's a very sly Christmas story written in sort of the tradition of like Roald Dahl. It's not meant to be read by kids. It's meant to be read to kids, and it's called Gingerland. And I adore this book, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever written because I had to. I'm writing it under a pseudonym, P.J. Hummel, and so I didn't just have to find my voice; I had to find his voice too. And I also had to figure out, okay, how am I, what's feeling right here? It took about a year to write it, and it doesn't take me a year to write anything. I mean, on average, I could write an episode of network television in a week. I'm pretty fast.
Wow.
There were a lot of false moves. The entire story came to me really in one big thing. Like that doesn't happen either. It was like, boom, I knew what it was. And I didn't trust it because it came so suddenly and whole. And so I started pushing outside of it and started taking every weird path, that it took me down until I realized, oh no, I was right the first time. And then I found the voice, and then I found the story. And the very last thing I found was sometime after I'd finished all my revisions, I figured out what I was actually writing about. And then I went, oh, wow. This is something. The premise is that it's these three ginger kids and gingerbread siblings, and they live in this beautiful like winter wonderland where Christmas is always around the corner, and everything's made out of candy and cotton candy and gingerbread and cookies and Necco wafers and everything else. And they end up, through circumstances, they fall out of that, and they find themselves in a world that's just like Gingerland. There's the main house in Gingerland is the Gingerland Mountain House, and they find this. It's this replica, but it's ginormous. It's like huge. Oh my God, this is just like the Great Room in the Gingerbread Mountain House. And it turns out they discover their whole world is basically a holiday diorama under glass in this old Adirondack hotel. And so the whole story is about them trying to get back home and find their way back home. And it wasn't until I finished it where I realized, oh Christ, I'm writing about the internet here, aren't I?
Wow.
Okay, this is a good book to read to children, you know. So I'm very proud of it. You can find that if you Google Substack Gingerland. I've been posting it one chapter at a time as a serial. The first 14 chapters are free. And if you subscribe, you can read the rest of the book. It's being illustrated by this incredibly talented illustrator, Zelda Devon. And she's just, I went to her, I said, I want this to look like it was like, I want the illustrations to look like it was written sometime in the 40s or the 50s, you know? And that's what she did. It's beautiful illustrations.
That's great. Maybe we can do another podcast interview about that book.
Oh, I really am. I'm deeply in love with this project, and I think it's probably. I say to myself, you know what? I think this might be the one that is probably the best thing I've ever done. So.
That's great. I love that. Well, you guys, thank you so much for the questions. They were great, and I have one last question for you, Daniel, that I ask all my guests. What do you want to be known for?
What do I want to be known for? I'd say, I would say that just a consistent. Yeah, that's not right. I honestly, I know this sounds like I'd really like to be known for Gingerland. If I have one thing where I go, oh, well, 50 Christmases from now, people are sitting around and they're reading this book to their with their family. It's become part of their holiday tradition. It would be that, because I feel like we're losing that. And I feel like we're losing. Everybody says, "Oh God, getting together with family. Oh, it's so awful." Somebody talks about politics. Uncle Harry's a drunk. It's like,
yeah.
And it's like, you know what? That's not the way it really was when I was a kid. It was like we used to look forward to this, and that whole spirit of taking care of people with less than you have, and that giddy kind of like excitement you would have, like walking down the street and looking in the windows at all the displays, and the Christmas displays that they'd put up over the streets, and there's again, I grew up in California, so there was no snow. It wasn't I didn't have any of that, but there was always this feeling of excitement and wonder and potential, and it really bothers me that as a society we've become so cynical. Oh, it's just another chance for people to sell something. And I think, no, I mean, we need that. We need that as a society. We need something we can rally around and feel good about, So, I don't know.
Something that unites, maybe that's what you.
Yeah, and the thing is the things that divide us, which everybody puts a white hot spotlight on, they're angels dancing on the head of a pin. We have way more in common, every human being, than we do that. Way more.
I agree.
Divides us, and it's like we're constantly being told, "Oh, yeah, this divisive thing," you're this and you want that, and it's like you can tell stories that appeal to everybody. You can tell stories about courage and kindness, and about redemption, and you can really make a difference in how people treat each other, and so I feel like Christmas is a rallying point, it's like, yeah, well, if I can have a hand in maybe bringing that back, that'd be pretty fucking cool.
That is the best answer I've had so far. That's great. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. You are such an amazing guest, and you're a genius.
Oh, please. Where's my wallet? Let me see. Where is it?
I ain't got no money. Okay. So
Well, it's been my pleasure, guys. I appreciate
you.
the questions,
Thank
and
you.
I'd love to do this
Thanks.
again with you, Grace. It was really
Definitely for Gingerland. I would love that.
well. Yeah, I would urge everybody go to Substack, check out Gingerland.
Substack. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a kid's book. It's disguised as a kid's book,
Yeah.
but it's not really a kid's book. The language, there's a story in a story within the story that's about the origin of Gingerland.
Yeah.
So there's 4 parts to it. It's a fairly sophisticated little tale. But
Nice. Well, definitely let's book another one and we'll do Gingerland.
all right.
All righty.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you everybody for your questions and for staying and being so supportive and awesome. So I would close the room and thank you for everybody who's watching on YouTube, like the 2 or 3 that are watching. I'm kidding.
Yay!
All right.